Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello, everybody. Carrie here with the Unicorn Company podcast. And I hope that you all have had a very happy Halloween. Today we will be discussing two mechs, one of which is a machine that inspires fear in its enemies, and the other what would have at first been thought to be a cheap knockoff, a mech that is a pale mirror of a machine that brought such destruction on the people who designed it. And they felt the only way to fight it was to build it for themselves. Today we will look at the Nova and the Blackhawk KU, or as I like to call it, the Blackhawk Ku. Why would we look at these two machines at the same time? Well, it's mainly because of how similar they are, and how well the Draconis Combine was able to copy and harness that which came to destroy them. The Nova was a machine that was born in an era when the clans were advancing technology, and the Hell's Horses were falling behind, stagnating in an era of great technological development. This machine would come out in 2921, a full 51 years after Clan Coyote had revealed the first Omnimech, the Kyoto. The scientist cast of the horses found themselves looking for inspiration in building their design and found it in the Supernova Assault Mech, itself a massive machine that carries 6 ER large lasers. What they would eventually build is a mech that would inspire so many more, and at the time was a grand statement of short to medium range firepower, a machine that you would get so close to use effectively that you could sometimes see the enemy mech warrior as you not only destroyed their machine but flayed their mech with multiple lasers, like some kind of twisted battlefield surgeon. This mech not only brought to bear a blistering array of weapons, but to enhance what had to be a nightmare scenario for those who faced it, the horses realized that with the capabilities of the Omni system, the mech's gyro could account for the addition of battle armor riding on the outside of the machine. And so not only would warriors face off against a single Nova, but also a point of elementals, which could be carried outside the mech, and then they would be swarmed by the elementals on board, like a swarm of locusts being disgorged by some kind of dark beast to latch onto and tear into a mech in a berserker rage. The new Nova Omni-Mech at first was a powerful weapon for the horses and brought with it great destruction. Eventually, though, the machine would spread throughout the clans, and even the Coyotes would adopt the machine, and in the late 31st century, even bring to the field a configuration which suited them. For even those who invented the precursor to this machine would use it against the horses. This, though, is not the greatest insult that can be conceived for the horses or their mech, their first foray into building Omni-Mechs. For you see, the Nova had found itself in the atonement of many of the invading clans, and was found to be a favorite of Clan Smoke Jaguar, which itself had been assigned an invasion corridor through the Draconis Combine on the clan's seemingly unstoppable march to Terra. The Jaguars favored the mech as, in its primary configuration, the mech seemed to embody much of what the battlefield doctrine was that the Jaguars favored. The Jaguars were an extremely aggressive and very brutal clan, and the Nova's design led itself to a kind of warfare that involved closing with your enemies and fighting them at short ranges in an attempt to bring them down quickly. The Nova proved itself to be quite good at this with its combination of firepower and maneuverability. Eventually, though, these swift hunters would find out that the dragon wasn't a prey that could easily be taken down. In an attempt to shatter the Draconis Combine and give them a far quicker route to Terra to become the Ill Clan, the Jaguars had decided to assault the Draconis Combine capital world of Luthien. The Jaguars had been either gifted or saddled with, depending on your point of view, Clan Novacat as part of their partners in their invasion corridor. And with the added strength of the Nova Cats, they planned their assault. And the Nova would be greatly represented among the machines taking a part in this attack. On the 4th of January 3052, the Jaguars and Nova Cats would drop onto the world of Luthien with 5 galaxies of mechs, all of them frontline Omni-Mechs, and among them, the Nova. The clans ended up facing not only the Draconis Combine forces on world, but also the Wolf Dragoons and the Kellhounds. The addition of the mercenaries was not expected by the clans, and as such, the fighting on the world was brutal, with major pushes by the clans on the Imperial City. In the end, though, they were defeated, with the Nova Cats suffering 60% losses due to their attempt to reach the capital city before the Jaguars in an attempt to gain more honor, and the Jaguars taking 50% casualties before they retreated off-world. While the battle itself is something that may be worth covering, it is something that will have to wait for a later time, though. The Dragoons and Hounds were able to make up for their losses with salvage, but the Combine seemed to prioritize the recovery of two chassis on the battlefield in particular. The Mad Dog, or Vulture, and a mech that had terrorized them in close-quarter fighting, the Nova, or as they called it, the Black Hawk. With a great deal of salvage, these new mechs were used by Luthien Armor Works to reverse engineer the designs, and while the Vulture would eventually bear out something that little resembled it in the Avatar, the Nova would find itself mimicked in something that mirrored it so closely that it would become one of the premier Innersphere Omni-Mechs, even being licensed to the Federated Commonwealth, the Black Hawk Coup. We'll be taking a look at the mechs side by side, as the Draconis Combine had enough salvage not only to recreate the Nova Prime, but also several of its variants, and did so as close to the originals as possible with the technology they had. So let us begin with the base Nova. The Nova is built on a standard structure and is clad in 10 tons of standard armor. The only weight-saving advancements employed on the mech is the use of a 250 rated extra light engine. The base chassis of the Nova also incorporates 5 jump jets, giving every configuration of the Omni-Mech a jump distance of up to 150 meters. To cool what will obviously be a heavy heat load, the Nova has 14 double heat sinks, with 10 mounted in the engine and 2 mounted in each of its side torsos. The base chassis of the Nova has what would seem to be a paltry 16 tons of pod space for the weapons and equipment in its prime configuration, though. It uses this space with incredible efficiency. The prime configuration mounts 12 ER medium lasers with 6 in each arm, and an additional 4 double heat sinks, making it prone to overheating if a pilot is not careful. But the horses didn't design it for careful, but to bring down the opponent swiftly. The Black Hawk Coup, on the other hand, is built from what would be considered substandard equipment in the clan's eyes, and to make up for the difference in technologies, the Draconis Combine re-engineered the mech 10 tons heavier to make up for it. Because of this, the base chassis of the Black Hawk Coup required a heavier Vlar 300 extra light engine to gain the same speed as its smaller clan cousin. The Black Hawk Coup, though, is more well armored, carrying 2.5 tons more armor on its heavier frame. It also mounts 5 jump jets in the base chassis, giving it the same jump distance as the Nova, and carries 14 double heat sinks as well. Because of the larger engine, it is able to hide all of these heat sinks inside the engine housing instead of taking up precious space in the side torsos. Because of its larger size, even with more armor, it has 17 tons of pod space, and while this is less than a third of the mech's weight, it is still slightly more than the Nova, and the Black Hawk Coup would need it. This mech emulates the Nova in its prime configuration, but is even more of a knife fighter than the clan mech, and oddly enough, more accurate at short range, as in each arm it carries 3 medium lasers and 3 medium pulse lasers. A small laser has been added to each side torso, with an additional double heat sink in each side torso. The Nova and Black Hawk Coup Alpha are both distinct departures from the Prime, in that they are built to be long-range direct fire support platforms. The mechs use their pod space to carry an extended range particle projection cannon in each arm, with an anti-missile system in each torso. The Nova feeds this with a single ton of case-protected ammunition, where the Black Hawk Coup has 2 tons of ammunition and forgoes the case protection. The Bravo configurations are where we begin to see the heavy weight disparity between the clan and Innersphere technologies. The Nova Bravo is something of a generalist, carrying in its right arm an Ultra Auto Cannon 5 with a ton of ammunition and a large pulse laser in the left arm. The Bravo configuration of the Black Hawk Coup also carries the same payload, but that is where the similarities end. The Nova carries even more firepower with a pair of machine guns in its left torso that are fed by a ton of ammunition, as well as an ER small laser in the right torso. The Nova also has case to protect it from ammunition explosions, which its inner sphere counterpart sadly lacks. Charlie configuration also shows this disparity. Both the Nova and Black Hawk Coup carry a Gauss rifle in their left arm and have a ton of ammunition for it. But that is the only similarity. The Black Hawk Coup has a single medium laser as its secondary weapon, and the Nova has so much more. The Nova, in addition to the Gauss rifle, has a small pulse laser in its right torso and a 4-pack short-range missile launcher in its left with a ton of ammunition. Of course, by its nature as a clan mech, all the ammunition and the explosive Gauss rifle are protected by case. Delta, the last configuration we'll be covering as the mechs diverge after this, is oddly enough where the disparity seems to serve the Black Hawk Coup, at least in standard Battletech. The Delta configuration of the Nova and Black Hawk Coup carry an LRM-20. The Nova does this in its right arm and the Coup in its left, and both have 2 tons of ammunition for the launcher. The Nova carries an LB-5X autocannon in its left arm with 2 tons of ammunition. The Black Hawk Coup, however, carries as its secondary weapon a large pulse laser in the right arm, giving it highly accurate firepower for anyone who closes, which also, oddly enough, hits harder than the LB-5X, meaning this is one of the few variants that, at least in raw numbers, outgun its clan counterpart. Overall, the Nova and the Black Hawk Coup are both ferocious and terrifying mechs that, in their primary configurations, excel at close to medium range combat. As they try to fill other roles, though, they both find themselves ducks out of water, where the real difference shows, though, is also in the differences between the configurations other than the prime. So, that covers the Nova and the Black Hawk Coup, but obviously, we still need to talk about how they look in Alpha Strike. Now, we're going to do this per mech instead of hopping back and forth or trying to directly compare, so let's begin with the Nova. It will always have the profile of Type Battle Mech, size 2, TMM of 2, movement of 10 jump, and it will also always have armor of 5 and structure of 3. The Nova Prime is a skirmisher that comes in at 41 points. In addition to the base stats, the mech has damage values of 5 at short and medium with no long range capability. It does, though, have a staggering 4 overheat, letting it put itself into shutdown on a turn that has been dealt enough damage that it knows it's about to die. The mech also has a special of ENE and Omni. The Alpha configuration is a sniper and comes in at 35 points. The twin ERPPCs give it damage values of 3 across the board with 1 overheat. This configuration has specials of anti-missile system, case, and Omni. My feeling on this configuration, though, is that it pretty much does the same job as an adder and a Black Hawk, a Nova for my clan listeners out there. A Nova really shouldn't be doing an adder's job. Bravo configuration is also a sniper and feels like a downgrade from Alpha. It comes in at 32 points. This one has damage values of 3 at short and medium with a long of 2. Bravo configuration has basic specials of Case and Omni, and once again, it feels like it's essentially a less good adder in this situation. Charlie configuration isn't any better, and is another sniper, this time at 31 points. It sacrifices even more damage capabilities with a short of 2, medium of 3, and long of 2 with no overheat. And no specials that stand out, with the Case and Omni specials being the only ones. It is essentially there if you want a Bravo but need to drop a point. Delta configuration of the Nova is the last we covered for standard Battletech, and, well, it tries hard to be a generalist at 29 points. It is a missile boat with damage values of 2 at every range, without an overheat value, and has a plethora of specials with Case, Flak 000 with asterisks, Indirect Fire 1, LRM 111, and Omni. Its flak and special ability isn't anything to write home about, and the indirect fire and LRM capabilities are handled far better by other mechs. Now, let's take a look at its counterpart, the Black Hawk Coup. The base chassis for the mech has the following stats. It's Battle Mech, size 3, TMM of 2 with a movement of 10 jump, with 7 armor and 3 structure in all of its configurations that we'll look at here. The primary configuration comes in at 46 points, putting it 5 points above the Nova Prime. Part of this is simply because of the additional armor, and part of it has to do with the damage available to it. The Prime configuration does 6 damage at short with 5 at medium and no long range. It doesn't have the raw hitting power when overheating, instead having an overheat of just 1. And it has specials of Energy and Omni, just like its clan counterpart. The Alpha configuration is a sniper, but lacks a bit of the hitting power of the Nova A. With damage values of 2 at every range and no overheat, it comes in at 35 points. It does have the specials of anti-missile system and Omni, but without case, it's more prone to dying from an ammunition explosion. And it comes in at, I already said it came in at 35. I don't know why I typed that twice. Bravo configuration is a 33-point skirmisher and hits even worse than the Alpha with damage values of 2 at short and medium and 1 at long with no overheat. It is lackluster at best. This isn't helped once again by the fact that it lacks case and only has the special of Omni. Charlie configuration in Alpha Strike is a bargain version of the Alpha configuration with damage values of 2 across the board, again, and a point cost of 34. This sniper has no overheat and has the special of Omni once again with obviously no case. Delta configuration is a missile boat and also is a toolbox version of Alpha. Once again, coming in at 35 points. The Delta configuration has damage values of 2 at every range and has no overheat. It does have specials of Indirect Fire 1, LRM 111, and Omni, at least dropping the non-existent or the wishing it's there, the wish version of Flak that the clan version has. But once again, it comes at the cost of having case. So overall, these two machines are incredible in the right hands. And in the right conditions, a Black Hawk Coup can beat the brakes off a Nova. It is pretty safe to say that neither of these mechs is really meant to be a generalist. And this is even shown when you look at further configurations, as they both go back to their roots of lots of lasers. The Nova has served as inspiration for several mechs, and it is safe to say that it lives rent-free in many a mech warrior and engineer's head, both in the Inner Sphere and the clans. Now, I do want to say, I did not expect Mechtober to be a full-on love fest for the Nova and the many mechs that it has inspired. I mean, I even did the Champion, which is one of my favorites. Actually, I love all of these versions. Well, okay, I don't love the Dark Age Blackhawk, but we talked about that. But all of this being said, it's kind of good we have the Champion in here because the Black Hawk Coup shows, even though I love the Champion, I absolutely love that mech. The Black Hawk Coup shows what a 60-tonner as a cavalry mech can really do. So, yeah, yeah, I don't know how else to put it. The Champion, I love it, but it's no Black Hawk Coup. So, I do want to thank you all for listening tonight, and I also want to thank all my patrons. Without you, this would not be possible. I also want to thank my sponsor, Fortress Miniatures and Games, and the next episode you will be hearing will be about the events of Southern Assault 3 that is being hosted by Bobby this upcoming weekend, who is also, obviously, the owner of Fortress Miniatures and Games. So I would highly recommend you go there and support the store. He's a great guy. He runs an awesome event every year. And if you ever get the chance to come down for Southern Assault, I'm assuming there will be a Southern Assault 4, it's amazing and totally worth it. So, if you would like to support the podcast, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/unicorn company. It's all one word, and you can sign up for it there. I'm switching away from giving away stuff that I was giving away to giving away products that I review. So things that you see on the YouTube channel will be making their way into the hands of my patrons. That is it for tonight. I hope that all of you have had a wonderful Halloween, a great night, and I know this is coming out really late and it'll probably be almost at the witching hour, but y'all have a happy Halloween and a happy November. Thanksgiving's coming up. Bye.